Today we're diving into the work of a historian, Dr. Khazaal Al-Majidi, whose research doesn't just question a piece of history, it tries to rewrite one of the most foundational stories of the ancient world. And his argument? Well, it's radical, and it might just change how you think about history itself.
Okay, let's just jump right into the deep end with his most stunning claim. He argues that what we think of as the great biblical history of ancient Israel, the kingdoms, the major figures, is not historical fact. Instead, he calls it a powerful story, a folkloric narrative that was actually written much, much later than we've always believed.
It's a jaw-dropping assertion, right? So you have to ask, how on earth does he get there? What kind of evidence, what kind of historical framework could possibly lead someone to challenge a story that's so deeply woven into our world? That's the mystery we're going to unpack.
To even begin to understand his claim, we first have to get on the same page about the rules of the game. Dr. Al-Majidi says the very definition of history has changed, and if we want to find the truth, we have to play by this new set of rules.
So what are these rules? Well, he paints the picture of two different fields. On one side, you've got what he calls old history. This is history as storytelling, a branch of literature or philosophy. But on the other side, he presents new history as something totally different, a rigorous, precise science. And this science has one unwavering, unshakable foundation: archaeology.
And this quote, this right here, is the heart of his entire method. For Dr. Al-Majidi, it's simple. If an event didn't leave behind a physical trace, a piece of pottery, a ruin, a mention in a neighbor's records, then you just can't call it historical fact. In his view, archaeology is the only thing that's objective. It doesn't have an opinion, it just describes what's there, separating what really happened from what might just be a good story.
Okay, so now let's see what happens when you take this strict archaeology first rulebook and apply it to the biblical narrative. The results, to put it mildly, are explosive. The claims here are pretty staggering because it's all about what's missing. Dr. Al-Majidi points to decades of intensive digging and says that even Israeli archaeologists have found, well, nothing. No physical evidence for the grand kingdoms of David and Solomon. And it's the same story for the Exodus. The Egyptians kept meticulous records, right? Yet there is not one single mention, archaeologically or in their texts, of a massive group of slaves leaving the country.
This, of course, raises the biggest question of all. If that foundational story isn't rooted in the ground of ancient Palestine, then where did it come from? And when was it actually written? This is what leads us to his alternate timeline.
In this version of events, the story we know wasn't born in ancient Palestine at all. He says it began much later, during the Babylonian exile, as people absorbed the myths of Mesopotamia. Then, centuries later, another group ends up exiled in Alexandria, Egypt. The ruler there, Ptolemy II, finds them a bit rebellious and decides he needs to understand them. So he commissions a book, and this is the pivotal moment. Around 250 BCE, 70 scholars are brought together to compile all the scattered oral traditions and folklore into a single cohesive text. That text is the Septuagint, and according to this theory, that is the true birth of the Torah. And get this, the religion itself wouldn't even be called Judaism for another 300 years.
Now, this is the absolute linchpin of his entire argument. We usually hear about the Septuagint as the first translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek. But Dr. Al-Majidi's theory is way more radical. He's saying it wasn't a translation at all. It was the original creation of the Torah as we know it, composed for the first time in Greek from a bunch of different oral stories floating around Alexandria.
This whole idea of a conflict between a popular narrative and what he calls science is a pattern Dr. Al-Majidi sees elsewhere in history. He actually applies the exact same thinking to another crucial moment in time, the Islamic Golden Age. He describes this period as a huge intellectual civil war inside Islam. On one side, you had the Mu'tazila, the rationalists. They believed reason should guide faith, and they wanted to build a philosophical religion. But on the other side, you had the Ash'ari, the traditionalists. For them, it was the other way around. Faith always comes first, and reason is just a tool to serve it.
So who won this war of ideas? Well, according to Dr. Al-Majidi, the traditionalists cleverly used the rationalists' own weapons, logic and philosophy, against them.
The knockout punch came from a theologian named Al-Ghazali, whose critique of philosophy was so powerful it basically shut that whole school of thought down. The end result, in Al-Majidi's telling, was the suppression of the rational philosophical mind within the civilization for centuries to come.
Dr. Al-Majidi doesn't mince words about the outcome. He says that once the rationalists were defeated, the intellectual arena was left wide open for more literalist interpretations. And with that, a vibrant tradition of science and philosophy was, as he puts it, extinguished.
Now, for Dr. Al-Majidi, this isn't just some abstract historical debate. He connects these ancient intellectual battles directly to our world today, arguing that understanding this history shows us a potential path forward.
This is where he draws the straight line from the past to the present. In his view, the decline of Islamic civilization wasn't really about outside forces. It was an internal problem, the choice to turn away from science and philosophy as core values of the culture. So what's the fix? He proposes a three-step plan for a modern revival. Step 1, go all in on science and the scientific method. Step 2, bring back philosophy and critical thinking in a big way. And step 3, reframe faith as a deeply personal, individual matter, totally separate from the state and from science. He believes this separation would actually allow all three to thrive.
And that brings us to the final, central challenge that his work leaves us with. It's a huge question that echoes from ancient history right into our lives today. Is it even possible for a civilization to do that? To neatly separate faith and science, making one a private affair and the other a public one, without losing something essential, its very soul in the process? What's gained and what's lost? It's a question that really gets to the heart of how we see our history, our identity, and our future.